So starting on October 1st, 2024, I decided I'm just going to use my resistance bands home gym setup in order to complete the workouts going into 2025. Now in total, this did last about 14 weeks, starting of course on October 1st, 2024 and ending on December 29th, 2024. So a few days before the new year, as I want to start the next week with my dumbbells and body weight just to change things up. But let's go over, see the plan, and see if this is something that might work for you. First off, we have the resistance bands themselves. These are loop bands, and they are the Sirius steel loop bands that I recently moved to after I snapped both the SunPow and Undersun bands in the past. The newer Undersun being a big problem, as I don't like them at all. But these are more expensive, but have done very well in this program, and have had no wear from what I can see after that 3-month period. Next up, we have the Geku Resistance Bands Bar, a newer product that I've recently been using with my training, and this has been a major upgrade that I've really enjoyed and has held up over time. I have noticed maybe slight bending in the hooks. I can't really tell. Unfortunately, I didn't take pictures or a video of it before now with the newer hooks. They still work and they still lie flat, so I can't really tell if it changed, but I just mentally feel like they have moved just slightly, but I will put pictures on the screen here so you can see how they are after the 3-month. Now, if they did bend, they would have only bent with the strongest band, the black one, when doing certain exercises. But again, it's hard for me to tell, so I can't say for sure. All right, the third item is the Geku Resistance Bands board. I've really enjoyed this. You get about 2 inches of pre-stretch while using this from exercises done from the floor, or if you set them up like my seated row position. Overall, I think that is an upgrade to the step platform I was using in the past. But do note that it is made all of bamboo, and you only get 2 inches versus the 4 inches. If you're looking for something that gives you more pre-stretch, go with the step platform instead. Next up, we have the Acme J hook handles, and I love these things. They've held up very well. I also use them a lot when doing pull-ups. If I want to do hammer pull-ups on where I only have a bar, they are excellent. They hold my body weight very well. They hold the bands very well. These are what I think are a must-have for anyone looking to do resistance bands with loop bands from your home. Again, these are one of my top, I'd say, rated items. Moving on, we have the Sportneer Doorway Pull-Up Bar. Again, a newer pull-up bar on my list. This one is one that's just a bar that fits on the inside of your door. Please watch out when extending this, that if you get this product and you're extending it into the door frame, that you don't go too far, or you can actually warp the wood if that's how your door frame is made, and potentially even crack the seam of where the boards meet in the upper corners of the door frame itself. So make sure that you're not pushing it too hard, but also make sure that it will hold your body weight if it's set up in your door. And do know I use the Acme J hook handles on this all the time, as I feel like this is just a more comfortable way to do pull-ups. So again, it holds my weight with both those handles and the bar very well. Next up is another doorway pull-up bar item, and these are the cross grips by JFlex. Again, use code GamerBody to save $120 off your order if you want to get these. But with these, I use these for traveling. So I did 2 weeks of traveling during the holiday season to see my family. I did take these with me in order to do just body weight workouts. So if this is of interest to you and you want to actually travel around and need to do pull-ups, I highly recommend these as a great option. Moving along, we have cinch wraps, and I use these simply for storing the resistance bands. If you just kind of have them all laying out, they get all tangled. So what I like to do is kind of fold them up and then I cinch them together in order to keep them nice and tidy for the next time I use the resistance bands. Moving along, we have the Holy Luck drawstring bag. This is what I store all of the bands in. It is getting kind of small with these Sirius steel bands and all the other equipment, so it doesn't feel like it fits everything. It did work, but I did leave some things out every once in a while. You may want to actually move to a backpack instead, but it did what it needed to for what I had in my home workouts. Next up, we have the Geku Ab Roller Wheels, and these actually became something very fun for me to use. I kind of do miss doing the ab rollouts themselves, as I did them a lot in the past, but this product was a good way to add in an ab exercise, as I am getting rid of the cable crunch, because again, I can use resistance that actually pulls my body off the ground, so I looked for just a bodyweight option, and these work very well and attach to the ends of the Geku Resistance Bands bar. Moving along, we have the Sirius Steel Bands Guard, and I use this simply to protect the bands or even make them stay together when doing things like a chest press. So for example, if I'm doing a standing chest press, I'll put this around the bands as it goes over my back in order to keep all the bands together. If you don't, sometimes if you're using multiple bands, maybe you're using like an in-between band to make it a little tougher, they can fall up and down your back on you, but this helps to keep them all together, makes things nice and simple. So I highly recommend looking into something like this if you are trying to do that. I also used it as a protector for my knees when doing things like kneeling overhead press and kneeling tricep extensions, which I'll get into a bit later, but it was able to help protect them when doing that on top of the Geku board. Next up is the Harbinger wrist straps. This one is one I've used for some of the bigger lifts like the Romanian deadlifts. That way my grip isn't a big issue. Instead, I can really focus on just the movement and allow the bar to kind of stay in my grip when going through some of those stronger lifts. And lastly are Raycon Fitness earbuds. Now, I've had these things for a very, very long time now. I'd say they're kind of like mid-range headphones. I just enjoy them. They're maybe a little bit expensive, but they're just simple. I take them out, they're Bluetooth, stick them in my ears, and we're ready to go. They don't fall out. Again, I've used them for a very, very long time without any issues. So that wraps up all the equipment. It is quite a lot of items, but in the end, it doesn't actually take up that much space. I'll put a picture on here with all the items that I actually used so you can see what it looks like and actually how it is a pretty good space-saving way to work out if you're looking to move in this direction. So with that, let's move on to the workout plan itself. Only a few things changed throughout the entire duration of this workout plan, but in the end, this is the plan that I came up with. First off, this plan consists of only using the resistance bands, items, and body weight for certain exercises. It's set up to be 3 days per week. I did Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and making sure that you have at least 24 hours between each one of your workouts. Each workout consisted of 5 total exercises and had 3 sets per exercise. And in each one, I did what's called momentary muscle failure, where I'd go to technical failure, or basically where I stayed in good form but couldn't do another rep. And once I did that, I like to do what's called 2 partial reps, where I kind of go as far as I can in the rep, but can't make it, and then do one last one before ending the set. So you do as many reps as you can fully, but then once you reach to a point where you can't go any further in the shortening position, or like a bicep curl, where you're curling it up when I can't go any higher, then I'll do those 2 extra reps, being partial reps, before ending the set. The workouts themselves only lasted about 30 to 35 minutes on average. So again, not too long, can fit in a day pretty easily, and is less than 2 hours total in your week. And when it comes to cardio, all I did was walking. I did no type of running at all, didn't even hop on a bike. The only thing I did was walking. Is mostly walking my dogs around my neighborhood, as they do need to get out every once in a while. Now, I quickly want to go over the vacation workout. I did make a full video on what I actually did, so I will link to that in the description if you want to know more about that exact workout plan. Again, it was only using the cross grips. That's the only thing I took with me, and the rest of it was just with my body weight. So with that, here is the exact workout plan laid out. I'll also add in the sets, reps, rest times, and a little description on each one of these workouts in the video. But with that, let's jump into the full plan, looking at the 3 workouts during the week. So for day 1 in this plan, which would be a Monday for me, the workouts or exercises broke down as follows. First one was the Zercher squat. I started with front squat, but moved over to the Zercher squat as I felt like this was more comfortable and an easier exercise to get into the starting position. The second one, focusing on the back, was the seated row. Again, allowing you to kind of sit on the ground and get into a position that doesn't really put a lot of stress on the lower back, as the squats themselves already did that. The third exercise was focusing on the chest with the standing chest press. Of course, make sure you use the band guard here to keep the bands together on your back. Moving from there, we have the upright row, which is focusing more on the mid delts and the traps. With this movement, I tried doing lateral raises before, but I found that the bands quickly get way too, I can't say heavy, but there's just too much resistance with them, and you quickly can't do even a single rep with them, so I moved over to upright rows. And then lastly, I did calf raises. When you do this, please make sure that you are separating your feet, that they're not too close together, in order to prevent the board from bending. So that is all of day 1. Here is the workout for day number 2. Again, please make sure you have 24 hours of rest between each one of these workouts. And in day number 2 for me, which would have been on a Wednesday, first off, I'd start with kneeling overhead presses. Make sure you have the steel band guard down, protect your knees or something else like a pillow, but this was the first one I did in order to target the shoulders. From there, I went into standing position and did the Romanian deadlifts with a focus on the hamstrings and glutes doing this movement. This is also one where I might have the wrist straps in order to make it so grip didn't become a bigger issue as I moved to the stronger and stronger bands. From there, I did standing shrugs. Now again, with this one, you want to make sure your feet are separated so that you're not bending the board, as I can do a lot of resistance with this one. I also used the J-hook handles that were able to withstand the force of the stronger bands. And your focus is really on just hitting the traps as hard as you can. Exercise number 4 for day 2 is the standing biceps curl. Probably the most straightforward exercise to do. Just make sure you're setting up as a single loop as you're going above your waist when doing this exercise. And lastly, we get to take out the Geku ab roller wheels and connect them to the bar for the ab rollouts. Again, I just did this strictly with body weight in order to do it. But if you have something like a weighted backpack, feel free to add that on to make this a little bit harder. All right, remember to put 24 hours between the next workout, but let's jump into day number 3. All right, to start off day number 3, we took out the cross grips, put them on our door frame, and just did pull-ups. The goal here is just to do pull-ups as best you can, keep it nice, slow, and controlled. And if you're not doing them too fast, you will find that you'll fatigue out very quickly, even with just your body weight. Moving on, we have the lying chest press. This is where you actually lie on the board. I recommend that you try and keep your full back on the board the whole time. You do not want it coming up while doing this and like hitting you in the back of the head or something weird like that. So make sure you are lying and have it secure on the ground while using the handles to set this one up. I did bend the board a little bit on this one as I got into the stronger bands, so something to look out for as well. And you will also feel this one bend as soon as you start getting to this heavier bands, as it's going straight into your back and you're trying to put your weight against it to keep it in place. From there, I went to suitcase squats. With this one, of course, make sure your feet are near the ends of the board in order to keep it in place, especially with the stronger bands. But your goal here is to really work the quads and glutes as best you can. Exercise number 4 is the kneeling overhead tricep extension. Again, anything that was overhead for me, I did in a kneeling position instead to prevent the band from stretching too far and snapping, which I have done in the past. This one uses the bar, pretty easy. Also make sure that you use the Series Steel band guard to kneel on in order to protect your knees. Now, the last exercise of day 3 is the pull apart, and I set this up a little differently now. Instead of just holding the bands, I actually wrap them or double wrap them around the J-hook handles and then pull apart while holding the handles themselves. Now, there is a bit less tension as you kind of get closer with your hands. You still have to have them pretty far apart to keep tension throughout the band, but just make sure as long as there is still a little bit of tension in that band, you are still doing just fine when you try and pull them apart again. The one issue I did have with this is you'll quickly run into problems trying to increase the resistance, as this is a very hard thing to increase a lot in one time. So just make sure you're at the proper resistance level when doing this exercise. All right, that is all of day 1, 2, and 3 of the workout program for the entire week. I did this every single week except for those vacation weeks in order to see what I could do in that 3-month period. All right, so with that, let's take a look at my body stat results after the 3-month period with just using the resistance bands home gym setup that I just went through. So looking at the data on screen, I broke it into the start and end dates of the actual workout plan. So on October 1st, you see what I was, and on December 29th, 2024, you actually see what my ending results were. And looking at these results, everything went in the positive direction except for the chest. Now, maybe this is because with this standing chest press, you can't really go all the way to your chest in the range of motion. You kind of still have to keep it out in front of you quite a bit in order to keep tension. Maybe I just didn't push hard enough. Maybe I could have done more. But in the end, it's the one that I saw go in a negative direction, which was kind of concerning. But everything else increased quite a bit, which is a good sign. Especially things, let's see, like this 0.91 with the shoulders. My shoulders are actually already at the golden ratio number, which is kind of crazy. So for that one to already be done is pretty good. Now I just got to maintain where it is. But again, everything else kind of still needs improvements, but I still saw improvements, which is good over that time period. So pretty cool to see that I actually went in the right direction. I'm glad it did work. Maybe it didn't work as good as some people want, but remember, my training age is a lot of years, so I'm not expecting a lot of change. This is actually more than I expected for many of the body parts during that time. Just do know I also put on quite a bit of body fat during the holiday season. That's probably because I ate a lot of junk food and had a lot of pies and stuff put in front of me. So that could also be contributing to these numbers being higher than if I dropped down to the 180 pounds. Do know I am 34 years old. I did weigh in at the final one at 199.4 pounds. So that's a big change if you look from when I lived in Texas just a few years ago, where I was around 180, 185 pounds to now almost 200. Now, people don't really say I look 200 pounds, but I'm getting close to it. So that is something I was aware of, that maybe it's just body fat that's keeping it up there. I just need to cut down to really get the definition to show. But do know, those are the changes I saw over that period. I will put some pictures on screen as well, so you can kind of see my before and after pictures. Again, I am holding a little bit of body weight, especially in the loved handles, but something I'm going to work on going into 2025. All right, with all that said, what are my final thoughts on using the resistance bands home gym setup for that 3-month period? So overall, this is the best resistance bands home gym setup I have used to date. Overall, it was pretty enjoyable for most of the time. Sometimes I didn't really want to do it, which is weird. I think mostly just because I really love to use body weight in most of my workouts with dumbbells. But the resistance bands were still fun and a good time to use. And I saw some results from it, so that's a really good sign. So during this time, I did run into some issues, including a minor injury that I had while going through the entire plan that I wanted to cover and make sure that you are aware of it in that 3-month period. And that injury was that I think I just overstressed my forearms when starting to move to some of the stronger bands, especially when I got to the black band. So what I noticed is that I just had a lot of pain kind of shoot up and down my forearms every once in a while. It wasn't all the time, but then especially moving to things like body weight, I could feel it when doing pull-ups. And it really, I think, hindered some of those results. So do be aware that when you're going through this, make sure you take your time at each one of the band resistance levels before moving to the next one. That way your body can adapt and get stronger between the workouts in order to actually withstand that type of tension and avoid stuff like I had in the beginning of this workout program. Also, I did notice that the board, the Geku board, starting to bend when I got to the heavier bands. So I do think the black band is pretty much as hard, as high as it can go before you're looking into actually cracking the board itself. Again, I highly recommend that you keep your feet on either side of the board and not in the middle, because if you did this with the black band, you risk actually breaking the bamboo board, in my opinion. It says it can withstand 600 pounds of force, but remember, my body weight of 200 is already there. I don't know if I'm really pulling 400 pounds of resistance, even at the fully stressed position, to kind of get it to crack. But as I am already bending the board, I didn't want to risk it by having like 1 foot in the middle of the board, doing something like calf raises or even split stand squat exercises. So that is why I always had 2 feet on the board, and they were at the ends of it to keep it planted on the ground. And then the last thing with the Geku resistance bands bar is I'm not really sure if the hooks that come with it bent or not. They kind of look like maybe they did a little bit, but again, I don't have a before or after pictures of them to kind of compare. It's still lays flat on the ground, which makes it seem like it's still in good condition, but there just seems like something slightly off on it. And if it is off, it's just barely after the 3-month period, but something that I might keep a lookout in case I do this again in the future. But again, anything under like the green band is going to be just fine with those hooks. Now, something else I also did at the beginning of this plan was remove all door related exercises using resistance bands. The main reason is I only like to do vertical movements on the door frames. And the ones I do, like the cable crunch and the pull down, I can lift my body right off the ground with the resistance I'm using. So there's pretty much no point. I'd have to weigh myself down in some way or like somehow like strap myself to the ground, which I don't have in position for me to do. So that's why I removed them. I could have used something also like the pull-up bar I have, but that goes against me doing this where someone else can do it. I really want to just, if I did it, it would be with the door frame, but I got rid of it for those reasons so that I would just do things with my body weight instead, which I still think will get good results for most people. This included pull-ups and the ab rollouts. Now looking at my body results, I'm decently happy with what I got. Again, with my training age, I wasn't expecting very much. Also going into the season where it's like eat as much food as you can and enjoy your family and all that, I've definitely put on quite a bit of body weight in that time. So again, around 200 pounds. I'd like to get closer to the 180, so I have some room to go there. And if I do, I'll probably look really shredded down at the 180 mark. But do know that I actually think the results were pretty good. I'm a little upset with the chest going down, but having only one thing decrease is, I think, a good sign in showing that you can get some results while using resistance bands. Now, one thing I did notice with the bands is the setup for some of them is just really annoying. Now, I try to pick exercises where it's as easy to get into as possible, but there's still going to be some that just cause trouble or just not very fun to set up. For example, the line chest press, while I think it's a good exercise, can be tough. You kind of have to like lean on one side than the other. Then getting them to be even on both sides can be a pain in the butt. So there are exercises like that that are still in this plan, but I try to find the best ones for you and keep them in till the end. So I still think these are all the best exercises, but that is a concern. Now with that, getting an even tension on both sides can still be a problem. So that is something you actually do have to watch out for when using bands, because you need to make sure both sides are even, or else one side's gonna be doing more resistance than the other. So make sure when you start that you're kind of leveling them out before you actually get into the exercise itself. Now the bands held up very well. I actually see no real wear and tear. There's no cracks, no seam breaks or anything like that in the Serious Steel bands. So that is awesome. These are expensive at around $120 as I'm making this video. So they are expensive, but for that price, they held up and they did a great job. They are stronger than any bands I've used before, especially that black band. That black band is probably as far as I could ever go with the bands before. Like, I don't think I could ever surpass that for many exercises, and most of my other equipment can't even withstand it anyway, especially like the board and stuff. I don't think I could go much higher than that. So I think the resistance provided through all the Serious Steel bands is very good, but if you're just starting to use resistance bands at all, you might find that these are actually pretty humbling when you start out. But that is it on my 3-month test using just the resistance bands. I want to make sure I kind of laid out everything for you regarding that experience, my results, all the equipment I used, everything, so that if you want to make a decision on building a resistance bands home gym, that you can take a look at this and pick the pieces or all the pieces in order to build your own. If you do use any of the links in the description, GamerBody does get a commission that helps make more videos like this in the future. I greatly appreciate it if you do. But with that, take a look, see if this works for you, and see if you can build out your home gym the way you want while using resistance bands.